Hi, welcome to the Earth Sacred Heart interview series. Today we're speaking to Lyndall, our amazing animal naturopath, about all things a little bit more extreme, like vaccines and tumours and stuff like that for your dogs. So, hi Lyndall, welcome.
Hi Kelly, how are you?
Good. Let's get straight into it. We wanted to talk about the vaccines for dogs and whether they're good or not, and it's a bit controversial. So
Yeah,
what's your take on whether we should vaccinate our dogs? Is it any time it is
yeah,
good?
yeah. Okay, so absolutely contentious. This is one of the biggest things. If I ever post about this on Facebook, I always get lots of interesting
Yeah.
comments, shall we say. But for me, and this is obviously, I'll be giving my professional view. For me, I actually don't generally recommend any vaccinations, although I do see potentially some merit in a dog, as a puppy, a newborn puppy that gets maybe those initial vaccines. Of course, I would never say to people, don't vaccinate. It's got to be, your choice. But the thing with vaccination, Kelly, that we see in dogs more than we see in humans is that what we're doing with our dogs is we're giving multiple vaccines every single year in a lot of cases, although that is slowly changing a little bit. Traditionally, every single year, your listeners will get that lovely letter in the mail from their vet saying your dog's due for their annual vaccination. So in dogs, it's what's called a C5, and that means there are 5 different diseases that are being vaccinated against. So that means 5 vaccines going into the body in one hit. And what that does when we do it regularly over 12, every year, is that it each time that happens is actually overexcites the immune system. And when we overexcite the immune system like that in let's say a synthetic way, that actually can lead to all sorts of overactive immune diseases such as autoimmune diseases, allergies, all those sorts of things. So that's the first issue with it. The
Can I
second
hold it
issue,
on
of
there for a
course,
sec?
yeah, yeah.
What is a vaccine? I know that's a really basic question, but so for dogs, what is a vaccine?
Well, the vaccines, it's a synthetic. I'm not going to call it. I guess you could call it a drug, a synthetic drug that is designed to actually help the body produce its own antibodies against a disease, potential disease. So, for example, if we talk about parvovirus, which is one of the most common
that was in my head.
diseases that dog owners are. Parvo is the big one that people get really nervous about. So it's actually helping to stimulate the immune response to produce antibodies against that so that the dog can get some immunity to that disease. But the issue there, as I said, with that is that it's really not stimulating it in the right way. So it's actually overstimulating it to develop other diseases in the long term. And the other problem with any vaccine is that the vaccines have to be put into a carrier base, much like you would put an essential oil into massage it on your skin or something like that.
Yeah.
So that carrier base is very much a chemical cocktail, and there are all sorts of potentially carcinogenic chemicals in that base. So not only are we causing this overexcitement of the immune system all the time with the vaccinations, but we're also putting toxins into the dog's body that can lead to all sorts of issues as well. So they're my 2 biggest problems with vaccination. And the other thing, I guess, is
another question on the vaccine. So when you say it's a synthetic way to excite the immune system, so they don't actually have the parvovirus like homeopathy and take it down to parts per million and put that in. What they do is they make a synthetic signature that's pretty similar that tricks the body. Is that right?
Yeah, it's along those lines. Yeah, it's it is very complex to explain, but it's just by nature of it being synthetic, that is problematic in itself, because if you want to look at it like another drug, essentially that's what it is. We know that any synthetic drug can cause problems with the body because what we want to remember is that the body is always looking for things that match its own type. So, if we give our dogs natural medicines and natural, whole foods and things like that, the body knows what to do with that. It just assimilates properly. But when we start putting in these foreign synthetic medications, sort of thing, the body's not quite sure of what to do with those. It's not designed to deal with it properly. And therefore, this is where you get this residual building up in the body.
Okay, so sorry, I cut you off then. You were going to...
No, that's all right.
Talk about the next bit.
Yes, it's actually gone from my head now. I'm just going to try and remember as we keep talking. It'll come back to me now. So, yeah.
We were talking about the fact that it overstimulates the immune system, but synthetically, and how that causes long-term problems later on. So the next one was...
Yeah, so the definitely that's a problem. The toxicity is a problem, and that's just come back to my head now. The other thing is that a lot of the research is showing, and much of this research is coming out of the States because we are a little bit behind here in Australia, but in Europe, the UK, and America, the research is showing that we don't need to be giving this frequency of vaccination to gain lifelong immunity. And a lot of these vaccines, particularly one that I can think of specifically is the kennel cough vaccine. Now, that's not necessarily routinely given for every single dog, but a lot of vets do give that now as an additional vaccine. It's often given up the nose. And that has been shown to be highly ineffective. So I've seen many dogs come into clinic that have actually had the vaccine, but they've also had multiple bouts of kennel cough after the vaccine. So, the research is there that a lot of these vaccines are just not doing what they're claiming that they should do. So, and I'm not saying that that is in every single case, but it is an issue as well.
So what's our alternative?
So we do have some alternatives. A few years ago, well, probably when I started working with dogs about 8 years ago, typically it was instead of using a standard conventional vaccination, what I would do is recommend a homeopathic nosode, which is like a more natural vaccine, which doesn't have those negative side effects and chemicals and so forth. Works along the same lines. But these days, titer testing, or if you're in American, titer testing is, oh, sorry, I just bumped my camera there. Titer testing is, titer testing is more of an option. And this is probably what the majority of my clients are doing now. So a titer test is not something that I can perform as an animal naturopath. It does need to be done through a vet. And essentially, Kelly, what that is a blood test. So what dog owners can do is take their dog to the vet. The vet will draw a blood sample from the dog, and what they do is they actually analyze that blood sample to check your dog's individual level of immunity against those diseases, those vaccinatable diseases. So, for example, parvovirus, they'll actually do a reading as to whether your dog is well and truly covered for that disease or whether the immunity is low. If for some reason that does come back as being low, they can then you can then make a decision, I guess, to boost on that. But I have not actually seen any titer tests come back with low immunity. I've seen them come back as either mid-range or high range, which is what would be classed as normal. And that is not a test that only really needs to be done every couple of years or even every 3 years. So it's a really fantastic alternative that stops the need for you to every year go in and have this have this vaccine done. So
how would they be immune? Is it passed down? Because I know that the mother's immunity gets passed down into the pups. Is it because the generations beforehand have been immunized or have had these diseases and grown natural immunity to them? Is that?
Are you talking about if a dog has natural immunity or if? Yeah, definitely. What you've got to remember, the first thing is that every dog, like every human, has an immune system, and the purpose of the immune system is to defend the body. That's basically what it's there for. So there's what's called innate defense. Innate defense, every mammal has it, every living thing has it, really. Innate defense is that mechanism that kicks into gear when something goes wrong. So whether there's an infection, whether there's a parasite, whether there's a tumor, anything that shouldn't be in the body, basically. So the immune system just rallies an attack against that. So that's the first thing to remember, that every dog has an innate defense. Now, how well that's working does depend on the health of the dog, but that's a very strong immune defense. The other thing is that, yeah, absolutely, there can be immunity passed down through the generations, depending also on the parents of the dog or grandparents of that dog, and how, their health as well. So that is passed down through the line. So there are a couple of ways that they will be, that there'll be that natural immunity. And of course, through really good diet and clean living and all of those sorts of things as well, you can get that immune response really strong and div. Because what I see a lot of is a lot of dogs that don't have a really active immune response, and that's because it's been dampened down through toxins and poor food choices and stress and all these other things. So when we get rid of those, we can just wake that immune system up and get it doing what it's supposed to do.
I suppose
that's an important
dogs lived for a really, really long time before we invented vaccines, didn't they? They weren't wiped out by parvo or kennel court for. So what you're basically saying there is that if they're strong, they're healthy, they're in the right environment, happy dogs, and they've got that immune system there to create that balance, isn't it? Wow, okay.
Absolutely. And when you have a look in the wild, there's that notion of survival of the fittest. So we do know that the weakest out of the, if you've got a pack of dogs, that the weakest in that pack will be the one that will tend not to, to survive, because it's the weakest animal. And that is just Mother Nature sort of keeping the survival of the strongest, fittest members of the pack, so that they can go on to breed other strong, fit, healthy dogs. So there's going to always be a few animals that are naturally weaker, but that is just Mother Nature's way of keeping the species going. And in the wild, yes, they certainly do have some stressors, but they don't face the domestic stresses of the dogs that we dogs these days in our own lives, where they're getting lots of chemicals and all sorts of other things that they're facing.
Yeah. So, and dealing with our stresses through their own bodies as well.
Absolutely. Huge thing, yeah. So.
Okay, so there's the TETA test. Do you still recommend the homeopathic version? Is that still available?
It's still available. I definitely occasionally order them in. It's not. I actually don't make those ones up. I do order those ones in. These days, I don't use them a lot, to be honest. What I my main focus when I'm working with a dog really is all about the immune system and the gut health. So I'm always working towards building strong immunity and balancing strong immunity with the dog. That's always my key focus. So that is an important part of the work. But definitely you can still get the no-sodes. They're available there to be used, and they're effective, to be used. But these days I do tend to just recommend more of the TETA testing, and I find that's a really accurate, valid test that gives, it's going to give you information. It's going to reduce the need for any vaccines. It's going to save you money. There's a whole lot of benefits to using a TETA test.
So that was my next question is, say if I'm going to go away at Christmas and I have to put Siren into a kennel, I know that she has to have specific. Not all of them do, actually. We've done it once because Siren's not vaccinated. But she doesn't even get fleas. She's like a tank. That dog is so healthy. Anyway, but they just kept her away, which she needs to be anyway, because she's got a healthy body, but she's not very good. She doesn't play well with other dogs. So they had to keep her away from other dogs anyway. So they still let her come in even though she hadn't been vaccinated. But I'm sure that there's people... That's just one thing that's in my head is like, that there's sometimes when they do have to get vaccinated. So is there a way to, and like you said with the TETA test, if they find that they're low, they might choose to do it. Is there a way to help balance the dog and really return their gut health and their immunity back to really good strength after having vaccines, if they choose to do the two?
So if I've got some dog owners that have assistants or that travel a lot, and they choose to put their dogs into a kennel situation. Not very many kennels here in Queensland or probably in Australia do actually accept homeopathic or no. There are a few around, but not many. So in those situations where clients have got have to vaccinate, I offer a couple of options for them. Of course, they can do nothing at all. But secondly, I have a vaccine detox remedy that I provide for clients that are going to have their dog vaccinated. I generally recommend giving that within 2 hours of having had a vaccine, and then a couple of follow-up doses as well. I also generally recommend around the time pre and post vaccine, say a week before and a week after, that I would give some vitamin C powder, just to sort of help with that immune system and just keep the immune system balanced. And that, with the homeopathic vaccine detox remedy, it's a really great way to offset reactivity, but it actually doesn't. A lot of people are worried that it's going to stop the vaccine from working, and that's not the case. It's just actually helping to remove any sort of, absolutely no. It's just really more about stopping that reactivity, because a lot of dogs will react quite quickly negatively after a vaccine, sometimes within hours, sometimes within days, sometimes within weeks. So we want to try and prevent that from happening. Yeah.
Okay. Is that very expensive?
No, I sell that remedy for $20, and it's that's currently not as. I do sell it as part of my leaky gut kit, because it's essential as part of that gut immunity kit. I don't have it on my website as a single remedy just at the moment, but your listeners can absolutely purchase it as a single remedy, and it's $20 plus their postage. So, and that will do. Yeah, we'll do a number of dogs. That remedy. It's only you don't need to give a lot.
Okay. So anything else on the vaccines? One is keeping your dog strong and healthy, like through the diet, which we've already talked about. So if any of you guys watching haven't had a look, Lyndall and I had an amazing conversation not long ago on diet. So that's in either Lyndall's YouTube feed or my YouTube feed or on Facebook. So pretty easy for you to find that. I'll just put up our YouTube feeds. Okay, so that's mine. Sorry, Lyndall. And
you're right.
Show yours. So yeah, anything else to do with vaccines that you think of that they need to know?
No, I think that's the main thing. I think the thing is just for people to remember that we are over-vaccinating our dogs. It is causing problems, and we're seeing a rapid increase in autoimmune diseases, including cancer. And a lot of that, as far as I'm concerned, can be traced back to, in part, the overuse of vaccination. So if we can consider reducing how frequently we do it, or teeter testing and avoiding it altogether, that's even better. And that's what I encourage all my clients to do.
Is there some or a couple of certain vaccines that you would say, like if they're going to vaccinate, that they would be the better choices? Is that even a question? Do you know what I mean? Like, is there some
yes, it is a question, definitely. The problem with it being here in Australia is that it's quite difficult to find a vet that will give a single vaccine. So say, for example, that parvo, the teeter test showed up that the parvo was low and that you actually did need to boost for that. It is difficult to find a vet that might boost for one single vaccine. What they generally will do, if it is low, is they'll just do a complete C5. I know overseas that it is a lot easier for dog owners to be able to just boost against a single disease. But once again, we are behind the times here, unfortunately. So it's a little bit harder to just get that one single vaccine. As I said, most of the time those teeters are just coming back in normal range anyway, so there's not really that need to be concerned about boosting over for one, sort of disease. So,
and do you think that vets have a problem with offering that service? Like if I was to go in there and say, just curious about vaccines, can I get this test first? So that the people are going to cop a bit of flack. Have you heard anything like that?
Yeah.
Depends on your vet.
Unfortunately. Yeah, it depends on your vet. Unfortunately, you will find that some vets will, like anything, they will have maybe a little bit of a bit of a go at you, maybe. But Some definitely holistic vets are on board with teeter testing, so they see the value in it. Some less conventional, less holistic, the more conventional vets, there are some that will do teeter testing. They might grumble a bit about it, but they'll do it. Every single vet can offer this service. It's just whether they're prepared to do it. Some are absolutely on the spectrum of we don't agree with it at all, it's nonsense. Others are somewhere in between, and then of course the more holistic vets are right on board. So we do here in clinic have some vets that we do recommend that we know are really good. Other than that, it is a matter of having that individual vet and saying, well, this is what I want to do, can you offer it?
When would you recommend they get a teeter test?
When? They can, if you're really any time, but if your listeners have a dog that's coming up due for their annual vaccination, or they're thinking they haven't done it for a while, they probably should. Now is the time to probably investigate that. As I said, once you've had one teeter test done, you really don't need to do it for another 2 or 3 years. It's not something you have to do every single year or 6 monthly or anything like that. It's just not necessary. Certainly what a lot of my clients do if they've got very young dogs, the young 1 or 2 year old dogs, is that they'll have those very early initial booster puppy shots done, and then they'll just teeter test 1 year after that, and then every 2 or 3 years. So really any time is okay for a teeter test. You don't necessarily need to have it done at a specific time, but usually for most people it's when they're coming up due for that dog to be vaccinated again. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for today. And if anybody has any more questions, as Linda was saying, you can get onto her website and ask. You can put ask your questions underneath the video. I'm sure we'll both be looking at them up on our YouTube channels and Facebooks. Thank you so much for coming. It's been a really, really, really big pleasure for Lyndall and I to be giving this information out. It's about all of us knowing more, so then we're more educated we are, the healthier we can be and happier we can be. Thank you, Lyndall.
Yeah.
You legend.
Yeah, that's my pleasure. I just love to share information, and I'm really grateful to have an opportunity for people to learn. And it's so important that we know that when somebody says to you there's nothing more that can be done, that's not the truth. There's so many things that can be done. So just always keep your eyes open to options. Yeah, so did I, because that's amazing. There's always options. Yep. So it's been great fun. Yeah. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you, my love. Remember, everybody, if you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe and press the bell so you get more information. We'll be, both of us, putting out lots of awesome information for free, just because we're really lucky enough to be connected to an amazing world of fantastic therapists and awesome information that's we want to share with you. And have an awesome day. Bye.
Bye for now.
Yeah.